We might have a couple of trickle in.
Okay, so thanks everyone for joining probably the fourth career webinar session for the whole series. And today we are going to have the topic on nonprofit organization. So just a quick reminder, this session has been recorded and will be available for everyone who have attended today. So today we have three incredible panelists that will join us to share their work from nonprofit organization, range from policy advocacy, sustainable mobility, as well as sustainable development and climate transition for city government. We'll start with 5 intro about the webinars, and then we'll have intro for each of the panelists. Then we will have a discussion about some of the key questions regarding to their job searching process, how they land into their current position. And feel free to put your question in the chat, because after a panel discussion, we will have a Q&A session where you're free to open your mic to ask questions directly with our panelists. And then we'll wrap up for today's session. A little bit about the webinar. It is organized by the Network of Interdisciplinary Urbanists, which was born out of the Master Program of Interdisciplinary Integrated Urbanism and Sustainable Design, at a short called IUSD. And in 2021, a group of alumni from the IUSD degree see the need for helping the alumni to better navigate their career during the pandemic. We have launched the first career webinar that have attract over 300 person attend. And then now we have 130 members across 13 countries and have officially registered ourselves an NGO in the US, hopefully to seek more funding to support a similar event like this, to support more people from the similar graduate program can navigate their career path. And so without further ado, we're going to pass this to the first panelist.
Thanks so much, Lynn. Yeah, it's incredible how much y'all have been able to do. Super excited to be here at the NIU Career Webinar. I'm Abhinand. I work as a senior economics analyst at an NGO/think tank based in Washington, D.C. called the Environmental Defense Fund. We're primarily working on, engaging governments as well as businesses and other institutions across the board in 4 different regions in the US, in the EU, China, India, on essentially getting public action and commitments on basically climate action across different disciplines. My work has been primarily on air pollution action. I manage a global cleaner initiative in the Latin American region. We're working with UNEP funding and have also previously worked at the World Resources Institute on air quality projects in India, Indonesia, and Kenya. And I'm happy to be here and share any insights that can be useful.
Sorry, I forget to move to the next slide. Would you like to say more about the project?
Sure, thank you. These are just a couple of pictures from some of the work that I was able to kind of work with our team on the ground over the past 3 years to achieve. So we launched a formal coalition. On the left, you will see a lot of us. That's our team on the ground. We launched a coalition with the mayor of the city to basically enhance air quality action planning. India, as you know, has some of the most polluted cities, especially Delhi is what comes to mind for a lot of people. It's no longer Shanghai. Delhi is one of the most polluted countries now cities in the world now. So we have been working with a model city, which is now India's cleanest city, with US government funding to basically establish a cleaner action plan, working across transportation sector, the waste management sector, to have solutions that don't, just address the kind of like the tip of the iceberg and actually address the root causes. So we've been working on how do we do fuel transitions and how do we encourage, EV adoption, is particularly in public infrastructure, public transportation, and it's been pretty successful. We've gotten public like commitments to increasing, EVs in the bus fleets from a paltry like 3% to now 40% over the next 10 to 15 years, and money has also been allocated for procurement and maintenance and things like that. I've also been involved in a landmark law that Brazil has recently passed, authorizing a new set of air quality standards. So we try to address the problem of air quality across different kind of like, avenues. One is actually designing solutions on the ground, like in the case in Indore in India, and then also engaging with national policy. As I just mentioned, in Brazil, kind of our work has been to really show them, like I'm mostly like an economist by training with urban planning, with a master's in urban planning. So I kind of do a lot of urban economics, trying to show them how city-led action on air quality can be profitable to citizens, and also, kind of showing them cost benefit assessments of what would it take to pass a stringent air quality standard, that the standard that aligns with some of the most important health criteria that the World Health Organization has outlined, and so on and so forth. So it's been a lot of like kind of policy advocacy and giving them technical knowledge products that kind of help. Hopefully, we hope that PITS really turns the needle in terms of making sure that they adopt ambitious action. So that's been a lot of the work that I've been doing with our team, the EDF Cleaner team. Yeah, super excited to hear from the other panelists as well.
Thanks so much for the introduction. That was very comprehensive, short, but also very inspiring and insight about your work. Next, we have Andreia. Andreia, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks, Lynn. Great to be here. Great to see Catalina and Lynn. We study together, so it's very nice to see the friendly faces here. So hello, everyone. I'm Andreia. I work at POLIS as the Active Travel and Health Cluster Lead. And maybe we can just move to the next one so I can just explain what POLIS is. So POLIS is a network, it's an European network of cities and regions for sustainable mobility innovation. So basically what we do, we work on peer-to-peer exchange, policy and advocacy, research, innovation, and we have over 100 cities and regions as our members. And through the work that I do, so I focus on active travel, also linking with urban planning, because we cannot talk about active travel without talking about urban planning, housing, and other aspects, including quality of our air, which is something that I also touch upon here. And through the work that we do, we basically are in touch with cities, so the local level, to understand what are the needs, what they're aiming to do, and how to bring this to the European level, and also how to bring the European level to the local level. So from the policies, what does this mean in implementation of cities? Maybe for the next slide, Lynn. So for example, we have a series of workshops, webinars, study visits. We have our conference where we tackle different aspects of sustainable mobility, where we bring the different cities from Europe together. Also public transport providers and some other research institutes to discuss this issue, sometimes more hands-on with the study visits, sometimes more on high-level discussions. And then the next one. And from that, we also work a lot with knowledge sharing and policy and advocacy. So we have a series of different publications, some of them direct to the European Commission on things that we hope will change and that cities are aiming at and they're looking for. So for example, the Just Transition Agenda, so how to make transport more just for everyone, different aspects of on active mobility, how to make this more inclusive for everyone, but also looking at the future of mobility with different aspects, digitalization, and other things. So basically, this is what I do. It's linking the European level with the local level here in Europe.
Thanks so much. There was a very great insight about all the different aspects of the work that you're working on. And as Andrea mentioned that we all went to the same Intech for the IUSD program. It was very glad that we're able to collect in my classmate to join this section. And next one where I'm going to hand it to Catalina.
Yes, and also pleasure to meet Abhinand and Andreia. We know each other already. And yeah, thanks to all the participants that are here today. So my name is Catalina Diaz. I'm an architect and urban planner, and I'm a researcher and urban strategist at the Fraunhofer Institute for Industrial Engineering. The Fraunhofer Society is a big organization, research institution in Germany with over 70 institutes, and the Institute of Industrial Engineering, where I work at, has a specific focus on cities, urban systems, and I'm working at the research unit called Climate Transition Strategies, where we support cities, and we also promote research to help cities being more sustainable, being climate neutral, being resilient, being just cities in this process. So I have worked in different projects, international projects mainly, with this focus in different countries. And I have some examples also to share with you. If you go to the next slide. This is an example of a system analysis that we have applied in different cities. The graph shows this, let's say, this wheel. It shows all the different systems that we could find in a city, and then it assesses the status of each of these, let's say, the portions of the wheel, to look to the city in a holistic way. Then we provide recommendations. To get to this point, this means that we have had desktop research, we have had interviews with local stakeholders, we have involved other research institutions, other colleagues from the Fraunhofer network, but also other institutions as well in the country where we work, or from the research network in Germany. And then the result of this research, we usually put in a report, comprehensive report of the City Lab. This is how we call this methodology. But I think what is most important than having a report that compiles all your results is when we can assure that the results of the research and all the participatory work that we do reaches as well the strategic documents of the city. So here, in this particular case, it was a project that we had in Mexico, in the city of Saltillo. This is a small city in the north of the country. And the research was key to complete the municipal climate action plan of the city. So the strategic document where they regulate and lay the strategies to be climate neutral and to implement as well mitigation and adaptation in their urban strategies. And yeah, I would say that this is the objective of the work that we do at Fraunhofer. Besides, know that this research has a purpose in shaping the cities through the strategic documents and strategies that the cities have. And if you go to the next slide, this is an image also from the same project, with the assessment that involved many workshops with also the local stakeholders, the citizens, local entities, and so on. We identified the problems that the city had. So in particular, in this case, the public spaces were having issues with floodings after heavy rains, which are quite common in the city. And then we proposed a series of nature-based solutions to cope with these issues. So in the picture, you see the workshop on the right, and then on the left, an image of an infiltration basin. And then also there were some rain gardens that were implemented in this public space, which completely changed the experience of people in this public area. And then one slide more, this is another example of another project where we are currently working in, and then this involves 11 cities, 10 of them in Europe and one observer city in Brazil. It seems that we have a common thread today with Brazil. So in this case, this is another perspective of these projects where we support cities. So in the previous project, we had the whole assessment from the beginning of the project or from the first stage. In this case, the cities that participate in this project are a bit more advanced. So some of them already have climate action plans. And then the task is to be a bit more, to bring them forward in the process of towards climate neutrality, which is our main topic. So yeah, happy to present these examples to show all the possibilities and the different implementations that we have through research. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Catalina, and thanks all again for your introduction. And I hope, like, after this one round of this introduction, everybody has all get an idea about the panelists. Now we're going to go to the panel discussion. It's going to ask mostly about you have done such a great job, how you would land in this such an impactful position that you are. What's your career searching journey? It's going to be the bulk of today's discussion. And also, I would just wanted to make this a little bit more like more human. So I will stop sharing so we can all see each other's face, and welcome to open your camera as well. So the first question that we would like to ask is, how did you decide to pursue the field and the position that you are currently in? Maybe I will start with Andreia, because I know she's been an advocate for mobility throughout her entire master program. I was so excited that she was working in police. So maybe you can start to share your journey.
Indeed. So I'm also an architect and urban planner, like as my first background, but I've always worked with sustainable mobility. And even though in Brazil, I worked with the public sector, like within the public sector, I wanted something else, so something different. And that's why I started looking for different things after the masters. And to be honest, POLIS came to me because I was doing a research about a specific topic in urban mobility, and I found one of the publications that POLIS had done, and then the work that at the time they did, now that we do, it really seemed of the type of thing that I wanted to do, because for me, it was more about providing some guidance to cities, so how to support cities. And then I just started to follow the work, and then I saw by chance an opening, and I went for it, and it worked. And to be honest, I'm gonna say I'm still here at the office. I don't know if someone is gonna hear me, but this is kind of like my dream job. So that's what I always wanted to do. Even though I'm the only Brazilian here not working in Brazil, I do miss that side, but the work that I do on a daily basis, it's what I was looking for. So it's basically linking mobility with urban planning, and in a small company that doesn't have to deal with the harsh of the public sector day to day.
Thank you for the insight. Next one, who want to come?
I started working at Fraunhofer as a student. So while I was studying the masters, I got this part-time position that they had. And the main intention for me to do that while I was studying, it was, of course, because besides supporting my finances as a student, international student in Germany, it was also to have this contrast between what we learn in the academia and the real world in the area that I was learning from. So in this urban world that I was discovering with the masters. And I would say one thing led to the other. So I worked there as a student for 1.5 years, and then this project came where the proposal was to work with Latin American cities, and yeah, me as a native speaker, I had interest, of course, and yeah, the opportunity to then be involved in this project. But I would say, in my case, it was key that I was already working while I was studying. And yeah, the motivation was mainly to have this real life perspective while I was a student as well.
Very good. Yeah, no, I love this question. I just spoke to interns at our firm 2 weeks ago answering basically that question. But yeah, I was doing my master's in urban planning at the University of Illinois, and then I started interning during my second year with the World Resources Institute. They have been instrumental in basically, designing the GHG protocol that everybody uses now. And I got to work with some of the team members who did that, and it was very exciting to be involved in like translating all of that big, number heavy, methods heavy, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions stuff for cities. And so I was working with one of the teams that did that. And then simultaneously, I was also, I'm originally from India. So then I was home and we had one of the worst floods ever. And I was like, okay, well, time to wake up. Climate change is real. It's happening to me, to everybody around us. And even though I'm an economist and a planner by training, I realized, well, some of my disciplinary knowledge is not serving me well to kind of fix something that's very immediate and very real and so stark, right? Like, especially in the US, like the number of hurricanes that have just increased like it's just unbelievable what's happening in terms of power shutdowns, literal cities getting flooded. And you would assume that, the US, given all of its complications and, being also still a very heavy economic power, does face a lot of storms and hurricanes and damages worth billions of dollars. We had one in Puerto Rico that the state is still recovering from. And we just recently had one in North Carolina, Florida, everywhere. So I think it's just happening everywhere around us. And so much more I was noticing around me at home. And so I was like, well, this is my career path. I need to keep at it because I want to be able to, be a part of some part of the solution. And like, I know there's a saying in Spanish, which is like poner mi granito de arena, which means like put my sand in the wall. Yeah, I don't know. It's basically do my part, right? A little bit. And so I think because of the desire to kind of work more in Puerto Rico, and like, and not just Puerto Rico, but I think just working on climate resilience as a whole, I started getting more involved in like research and analytics and translating some of the econ knowledge I had, because I also noticed that, with cities, when I was working with Puerto Rico or any of the cities that I currently work with in Brazil as well, money speaks. They want to see that like whatever solutions we propose, that it's profitable. And so my job is to really translate all of that, the intangible social benefits like health exposure reduction as a result of cleaner mobility into cost values. So it's, and I think when I started to apply that, I really got more and more involved in seeing the power of, sometimes just, I don't know, just throwing yourself into tasks. And so I think that's kind of how I made, I came here. I'm still only like 3 years into the workforce. So I'm still debating, before you ask me, Lynn, if this is my dream job. There are aspects of it, but, we'll see. And maybe Andreia and Catalina can come join us because we're having a growing Latin America EDF team. So not trying to poach you, yeah, but anyway.
Thank you. But also anyone in our audience who are also from Latin America, this is your opportunity to go. Thanks so much for throwing that out. And so the next question is more realistically. So where did you find this opportunity and position? Just like, because in the job hunting process, we also wanted to know, yes, I'm so interesting about this type of work, but where I can find the perfect job list that is really matched to that criteria. So I think Catalina already mentioned or maybe you can share how you find this student job posting.
Yeah, so in my case, I was looking what like the options were in Stuttgart back then to work in urban planning, sustainability, and so on. And then that's how I found out the website of the Fraunhofer Institute. And then I saw there was this specific institute in Stuttgart dealing with these topics. And I basically sent emails to a couple of people that I saw that were the contact person in certain projects there in the website. And I think I was lucky enough because one of them replied to me and said, actually, there's a position. Now we are looking for a student. And then he sent me the link to the position that they had open. But it was, me reaching out to people, just writing emails, introducing myself, attaching my CV.
Thank you. That is a very proactive. Well, actually, that was amazing. That we should all do that. And how about?
Yeah, I'll echo what Catalina said. I think for me also getting into the space was helpful because I had that first internship. And then so it's like once you're in, you try to somehow just stay or move, kind of like parallelly, laterally to another organization. So that's kind of what happened with me. I started as an intern at at WRI, and then I was there for two years, and then WRI and my current organization were working on the same project, and they kind of poached me. But basically what happens is once you get in, you have the ability to kind of, network around and figure out ways to kind of move within the system. And that's always been easy for a lot of my, like when I was doing my master's in urban planning at University of Illinois as well, many people were able to like what we call like convert internships into full-time jobs, just because they put in the work of like, training you for 3 months. And it's easier for them if you're kind of attached to a project to just keep working on it. Rather than hire a whole new person and train them, even if they had maybe like 1 or 2 years more experience than you. I know that's not always the case, but it's always happened such that, interns do have kind of like the first picking at full-time jobs internally, especially if there's a kind of like skill set alignment and if there's not like an insane number of year experience.
About
And for me, well, as I said, I was actually doing a research on urban mobility, and I found this, but basically that's what I did because it was not only I was doing some research more for personal reasons as well. So I was always looking for different organizations working with sustainable urban mobility. So I was always up to date on what they were doing, and then if they had openings and things like that. So yeah, I reach out to many different ones. But then just being up to date to whatever topic you like, just knowing what institutions are doing is always a great way of knowing if there's a possibility, like we never know. It might appear like this.
Thanks so much. A little bit more detail to the whole application process. So what was the application process? Or it's just like throwing your CV in, or how many rounds of interview that you have gone through before you get granting for this position? Would like to go first?
I will start. So I send the letter of interest, or I don't know how we say, and the CV, and then they call me for an interview. So then it was an interview with the practical test, like, so I had the interview, and then I had half an hour to do an exercise. So they would leave me, it was online because it was still COVID. So they would leave me alone, and then after 30 minutes I had to send the documents, and basically that was it. It was very straightforward, very easy, just sending the CV, one interview and the test. The interview and the test was at the same day, time, and that was it.
Would you mind sharing what kind of task you did?
Yeah, sure. So I had two questions. One was how I would deal with promoting participatory process for a specific project in a city. So how I would communicate that this was happening. And the other one was for me to pretend I was creating like a news item talking about the implications of COVID in urban mobility. So I just had to create it like this two short text to talk about that.
Thank you. How about Ata and Abhin?
Yeah, I think it was similar, like sending your CV, all of that, and then also like practical tasks. But one thing I will note is that at least here we've noticed, I mean, like in a lot of the US nonprofit world, it's kind of almost impossible to get your application picked unless you have like an employee referee listed. So I think before applying, doing that networking and finding somebody who's there, who can just, even after like a 30-minute call, everybody gets the whole job hunt and how stressful it is and how, it's almost like a numbers game. You get 3 out of 300 applications that you send picked up, right? So I think people are always very forthcoming to come and help and be employee referees. So I think that would be a very essential step. And in many cases, what they will do is once you write their name as an employee referee, they will message their HR person and then be like, hey, my friend or this person I know has applied. Look at it. Because in many cases also you get a referral bonus. Like it's nothing, it's very few dollars, but something is better than nothing. So I think there's also an incentive for them to do that. So I think yeah, it was that, and then the CV and a lot of like 3-4 rounds of interviews. I also had like a practical task, as Andrea mentioned, and because it was my job is a little math heavy, like in numbers heavy, I had to do like a cost benefit assessment live with like one of our directors for like an hour long. It was brutal, but I think the point is not to get it right, but to just show them that even if I make mistakes, I can kind of like catch myself and kind of like think through it. So yeah, I think that might also be a thing, especially with a lot of jobs that involve a lot of research and analysis, to kind of like show through your thinking process. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing. How about Catalina?
When I applied as a student, it was, I would say, quite simple. They just called me. I had an interview. We spoke about the topic. So they asked some, topic-wise questions. And yeah, then 2 weeks later, they called me back. But I think what was then interesting maybe for this question is, so I was a student assistant for 1.5 years, and then there was this opening for this new project with the Latin American cities. And for that, there was again an internal call for candidates. And then I applied to this one together also with other people that were also student assistants in my department. And we all went through the same process. So we had, it was one interview with the team leader, 2 team leaders, and the leader of the department as well. So yeah, let's say 2 levels. And after that, there was an interview with the institute's head of the institute. And her interest was mainly on research. So she asked many things about my master thesis, the topics that I was interested in research, and so on. And in the other interview that I had with the team leaders, I got this. So there were 3 people and me. And I have a very funny anecdote because one of them, my actually former team leader, he asked me, one of his questions was, how many tennis balls can you fit in one plane? And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, it's a legit question. So what's your answer? And it was very funny because the other 2 team leaders that were there were as impressed as I was of this question. And then they were also very curious. And then they started asking questions to him if he knew the answer. But then he said that what he wanted to know is how I could, is not the answer what matters, but how I address the process of fitting these balls to the plane. And then this was, I think it was good that he said this, because I was blank when he just raised this question. And once he said this, so I started not throwing their ideas. So I said, okay, probably you will need some boxes to put the balls, because you won't do these one by one. And then, my mind went through the whole story. And the funny thing was that at the end, the department leader, he was taking notes of everything I was saying, and he was the one who made the calculation. So yeah, that was an interesting interview. And yeah, probably this helps, because I know there are people who like to ask this type of out-of-the-box questions during the interviews.
Thank you. That's very interesting. Well, this actually
Lynn?
leads to- yes.
Sorry, can I just add something? Because
Yeah.
while I was studying in Stuttgart, I also worked for Fraunhofer. And for that interview, they actually asked me to prepare a 10-minute presentation. So I had to do like a full, gladly I had experience on the topic, but it was like not a super simple task. It was something a little bit more complicated that they actually used afterwards in the project as well. So I guess they really enjoyed my presentation, but it was like a full 10 minutes presentation in a job interview that I didn't even know I was gonna get. So I had to put a lot of effort for that one. Just wanted to share that at Fraunhofer, and might be that they ask a little bit more of people.
Thank you. Well, yeah, the other question I do have is like following on the interview topic, because interview is always very challenging. Like you have no idea that you all share all the interesting question that the interviewer have asking you. So how would you, before knowing that, how would you preparing yourself for the interview? Did you do, what kind of research you have done, and what kind of practice you have done?
So I will start again. So for POLIS, what I did was I went through all their work, to know a little bit more how they were working, or the topics that they would be more interested in, and then also to shape a little bit how my experience would support the work that they were doing, because we all come from very different backgrounds. So I had way more experience in Brazil, and they work mainly in Europe. So how would this be relevant? So it also helped me to reshape how I tell my story, and what I could bring from being from a different context and what I had learned. So also coming from the public sector, what it meant. Also because I had worked many years and then I stopped to study again. So learning more about their work, I could also think about how I would see myself and all the experience that I had into their reality. And I think it worked very well, because then I could also mention specific things that they were working on and how I could contribute to that. Or yeah, so I think it's always very good to understand, and also for us, like how we see ourselves. Okay, so what I can bring to that, and what they also could bring to myself, so kind of like, I hope this will be a collaboration, so to understand like both ways.
Yeah, I wanted to echo what Andrea said, especially about that kind of like, it's a conversation, not just like a one-way street. And I think one thing that always has helped me in a lot of the interviews, I've interviewed with like a bunch of environmental nonprofits, mostly in the US, which have offices in the EU. And I think a lot of the good interviews, I mean, at least interviews that I felt were good, were those where I was able to like go in with like 2 or 3 questions pre-planned that they, when they're like, so do you have any questions? I think it's useful to ask something, but not something super basic about the job description, but more so about like, very like high level things like mission, vision, values, goals, all of that stuff. If you like ask that, I feel like that's an easy way to like show them that you are aligned with, wanting to be closer to their mission and objectives, and already demonstrating to them that you're thinking big picture. Because I think as we kind of progress in our career, we actually see that, we do less and less of technical and more of strategy work. And I think so really pointing out that like, okay, I'm ready for this. I'm ready to like kind of, in 3 years or 5 years, think strategy by just asking those simple questions in an interview does actually leave a good impression. And I also think preparation for interviews depends on like who's doing it. I think based on title, because sometimes, they do it, especially if you work with like a matrixed organization, then they make you interview with like multiple teams, and then they sometimes don't even tell you who your direct manager will be. You just have to like figure it out. And so I think depending on the team and the like if it's a director, you have to like go on with some of those big picture questions. But if it's like a manager, I think they will have more technical questions to ask you, because they might be immediately sort of managing you on the day-to-day task and deliverables. So I think just figuring out that and customizing your prep according to like the job title and the kind of department of the person interviewing would be super useful. And it just saves you time and energy. Because I've had interviews where I've like over prepared, and that's given me more anxiety actually, which is so weird, but it does happen because you burn yourself out preparing for like 30 minutes, forgetting what Andrea said, like that it's like a two-way conversation, not just one way, right? Like you're not getting tested. We're all in academia and we think that everything is a test and we have to get an A+, but sometimes B is enough, right? And then you still get to the next round, and then you can get an A there, and then it's fine, So I think the long game, that's what we should all be playing.
Amazing. I think that's very useful for someone who is now doing a lot of interview to have that mindset. And Catalina, do you have something you want to share with us?
Because you guys have covered already many things. At least I would say I'm also now from the other side interviewing students that want to engage for, I don't know, a semester, 2 semesters, and so on. And I think all these applications that you see that the person put effort on the letter, the curriculum, it doesn't need to be like a fancy design, but that is really taken care of, like the information is also clear. These are the ones that usually caught my eye more than others. And now that we have ChatGPT and all these AI tools to make things easier, it's also easy to miss little details. And I have received many cover letters with these blank spaces that ChatGPT gives you to put your information, the cover letter that is already submitted. So I would say that maybe this is something that, besides all the getting information about what the company does, it's important that you also, use these tools, but really make sure that you customize this feedback so that what your application is considered. I have received many applications that have many standard sentences like I'm very impressed by the products of your company. And to start, we are not a company, we are a research institution, and we don't have products. So yeah, it's then you see this person didn't really just use all the AI, but didn't really think through much. So
Can I just quickly add something because Catalina mentioned feedback, and that just triggered this one thing. I think one of the there's a lot of people on Instagram that now sell you products like, this is how you prepare an interview, don't buy them. But like I think one of the main things that they keep saying is asking this one question that really gives you immediate feedback at the end of the interview, which is like, is there anything about your resume? Is there anything about my resume that gives you a pause or something that I can help address further? And that's like a very simple question to ask, basically to get like a gut check immediately as you're in that interview heat process, right? Like, and then they can just, if they're like fumbling, then that they have some reservations. But if they're like, oh no, you did great, then you can at least, shut the computer down thinking like, okay, I did my best, and you can move on. So I think that question has been very like revolutionary, to say the least, and for a lot of my friends as well, because you get that immediate gut check and then you can just move on. So yeah.
Thank you. So we are on top of our panel discussion. So we are now open our floor to our participant to raise your question. We already have many of the questions that's in the chat, and that's
I can go through a couple if you want, Lynn. So TCR is asking for projects involved in the private public partnerships and participation on different levels, if the participants could reflect on their sectoral experience and the challenges that they faced from top up and bottom down levels. I think so. In a nutshell, how is your role, functioning across different like cross-sectoral partnerships?
With some recent experience that I had. So we have these 11 cities in this project that I presented at the beginning, and we also have tool providers, so companies that have specific products, software that can be applied to these cities. And in some cases, these tools are quite developed. In other cases, the interaction with the cities will help both the city and the tool provider to develop their tool better. But particularly in the case of the tools that have been developed, I've noticed how the tool is not really final till you contrast this with a real environment. So once we match, for example, these cities with the tool providers and the tool was already completed, there's still work that you need to put on customizing this to the specific needs of the city. So this put in a sector's perspective. There are many solutions and many things out there in the industry that we can apply to cities or to specific challenges, for example, climate change and so on. But this always needs to be customized, and the immediate context needs to be considered before you apply something that you have done before in other contexts, because you cannot really apply the same process and follow the same process in all different contexts that you work. Otherwise, I mean, you can do it, but you will be letting so many things out in the acknowledgement of the specific characteristics of the places where you work.
Thank you, fully.
Maybe-
Yes.
Sorry, I will follow up because we also work in many European projects, as the one Catalina was talking about, and we have similar issues. And since we are a network of cities, we have a lot of contacts with cities, and in the mobility and transport sector, the private sector can be a little bit hard to deal with sometimes. So a bunch of those approaches to simply try to sell or push solutions that they're trying to, just to profit on, as this is the way forward for mobility. And we always try to find ways to open a discussion between the private sector and the public sector, because it should be an actual partnership and collaboration. So it's not the private sector dictating the rules of how transport is going to work, like just coming up with solutions and then cities have to deal with it, which is the case for a bunch of things, micromobility, and a lot of things happen like this. So we always try to have like this open spaces where the cities that are interested can also come closer to the private sector to discuss this, but also bringing the private sector to understand what are the real needs of cities to shape some of their products or offers. Of course, when we talk about the automotive sector, this is a way more complex way of dealing with this. So we work closely with representatives of the automotive sector, and we try to open the discussion about policies and the future of the sector and how we can try to reshape the role that private automotives have in cities, but it's very hard. And also this also works in the European level to the local level. So a lot of times the European Commission, European Union just have like these policies that they dump on cities, not thinking on how cities will deal with that or move forward with that. So we basically just always try to find a common ground to bring like different sectors or the different levels together, so they both can express their expectations, needs, or all of this, and the challenges as well. Most of the times it works okay, but there are some topics that it's constant work, and of course it's not simple, but what we do is basically try to show the different perspectives. So, you know, like we can find the common grounds and partnerships that are real partnerships. But it's also important, so we represent cities, you know, like we want cities to be better places to live, and urban mobility is part of it. So sometimes it's also about being firm about the needs of cities, or expressing exactly what cities want, and then, you know, just sharing this and just saying, look, if you want to be part of this, you need to follow this, this, and this. So it's finding a common ground, but sometimes it's also being firm about the needs of cities. Yeah.
Can I just quickly jump in on that? Oh, sorry. Sorry.
No, go.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, I remember like in planning school learning something about like 4 levels of participatory planning, you know, like information, something, and then the last one is like truly transformative social justice. I think from the nonprofit perspective, all funders want that truly transformative social justice for like $5 or €5, whatever. And so it's like, it's also a question of like funding, right? Like, I think they're very stingy when it comes to wanting, you know, giving resources versus wanting so much more. And I think it's also trying to like walk that tightrope of showing them that, listen, you know, if you want truly transformative social justice, you need to be, you know, like a government spending on public welfare programs, which cost billions of dollars. So I think tempering expectations also helps at the outset with partnerships that are especially like matrixed and multi-organization. Like Catalina said, if you're in different cities, I think it's like, you know, working within those political economies that are very different in different regions, especially like, you know, even when we say global south versus north, like even within global south, like the context in India for partnerships is completely different from Brazil, you know, in terms of like appetite for some of the topics that we talk about. So I think navigating that and really setting expectations clear on the fact that you're not going to get truly transformative social justice, even though you might say that on your brochure, in like at least internal discussions, is like a good level setting place to begin with, so that, you know, nobody's kind of like reinventing the wheel or kind of like flying high in the sky.
Love that. Also helps you avoid burnout, trying to save the world. I was just going to say, Lynn, I think that the other questions may have gotten addressed in the chat. So Paolo was asking about the UP 2030 and if it extends to other countries. And Catalina, I can see that you answered that. And then same thing, someone asked if interview questions with Fraunhofer had to be answered in German. And Catalina, you said yes, that was the case. And then for Abhinand, I know that you were sharing some of the organizations that you were affiliated with in the US that also have offices in Europe. I don't know if there's anyone else in the room here who wanted just to vocalize their questions while we still have a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's a little quiet today.
I also think all our panelists has been active, address the question in the chat, so we can have still a little bit mini back in the end of the presentation. Okay, so again, now we are on the top of hours. First of thank everyone for is there one more question? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap up the session. No? Okay. So thanks again for, did I share my screen already? Okay. Thank you. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. So thanks again for our amazing panelists and classmates and friends who have shared all your knowledge. It was really amazing to hear all your work, as well as how you get on your career journey, and definitely would like to continue engage with you and just learning how you continue to save the world. But Also, thank everyone who attend and actively throwing your question to make this session so engaging. Then feel free to join us to our LinkedIn. We currently reorganized our website, so we only now accept our membership through LinkedIn, but feel free to following us. We'll continue to have more information about our initiative. The next will be the last session for the whole series. That will be at the 26th of November, focusing on freelance, social enterprise, and academia. Like all the good sector that we have not discussed this year will be packed at the last session. Then thanks everyone again. I hope you have a good rest of your day and hope to see you in the next one.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Lynn and Dory. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.